This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Hello everyone, Grace Ormsby here. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. And while we do love chatting with our investors, we also pay some pretty big attention to the news and what's going on in the world around us. And today is one of those days because we have got wind this week that the Real Estate Buyers Agent Association of Australia has a new president. It is an absolute pleasure to be welcoming her onto the show today. Melinda Jennison, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, Grace. It's great to be back on the Smart Property Investment Show. And I look forward to sharing an update on what we're doing at REBAA and also, what's happening across the market.
I think it is pretty cool. People probably do know you better on this show anyway from your role in Streamline Property Buyers up in Queensland. The pieces that you put forward every month on what's going on in the Brisbane market are always really, really well received by our readers. So, hopefully you're not too busy to keep going with those, but I completely understand if you are, Melinda.
Absolutely not. No, I love contributing the articles, and I do know that people are hungry for information. So, that's one of the reasons why I put my hand up to take on this type of role. I do love sharing information. I love educating consumers, and I'll certainly be continuing to distribute those market updates for you, Grace, on a regular basis.
I'm very glad to hear it. So talk us through this news. It did come through on Tuesday that you were to be the new president of REBAA. It's not the first time you've been associated with the organisation. You've worked with them for a long time now. What motivated you to take on that top role? And obviously you did then require being elected. So it's having the support of others around you as well. But was it something that you'd been thinking about for a while?
Look, I know that the outgoing executive committee had made others aware that they were stepping out of some of the big roles. We were losing our president and our vice president in the same year. For the last 12 months, I have taken a committee position with REBAA as the Queensland state representative. So I already had an understanding of the operations of the organisation and certainly the direction that the organisation was taking. I was also part of the subcommittee that recently planned and delivered a conference up at Hamilton Island where members all got together to, improve our industry as a whole, to engage in learning and development activities. And a big part of that conference was understanding what members wanted from the organisation in the years ahead. And I was instrumental in being involved in that discussion. So I think in any leadership role, you really need to listen to your people. And in this case, being an association group, listening to members in terms of the direction that they're wanting to take the association. So when I knew that our current president was stepping aside, I felt that I had the skills necessary to lead the new strategic direction that REBAA will now take in the years ahead.
Can you share some of that strategic direction and what your priorities are going to be in the next little while?
Absolutely. Look, I've got a vision for REBAA that includes a really collaborative, cohesive association group. Our organisation exists to ensure that the buyer's agent industry across Australia maintains minimum standards so that consumers can come to a member that's affiliated with REBAA and know that they're going to have a layer of protection outside those that may not already be members. What that does is it ensures that people are working with a buyer's agent who has full professional indemnity cover. They abide by a code of practice to ensure that they're going to be looked after and they're not going to be treated in the same way. They're not going to feel like it's just a transaction. The buyer's agents affiliated with REBAA really do advocate for best practice. So I think that strategic direction that we are taking, it's going to build upon the foundations that have already been set in place by previous presidents and committee members. But obviously the buyer's agent industry has changed significantly across Australia in the last few years. So as an association group, we are aware of that change and we're really wanting to grow our membership to provide additional training and resources to buyer's agents across Australia so that more people have access to, some of the top buyer's agents in the industry who are part of REBAA and they're able to learn from those that have been in the industry for a very long time.
You sort of have half got to the point of my next question, which was just around, you've been in the industry now for quite a while. What are some of those changes that you have seen? Because there's obviously been an explosion of buyer's agents onto the scene, especially I want to say since COVID, and people may be reconsidering their own career paths.
Absolutely. Of course, the buyer's agent industry, Australia, in my opinion, is still in its infancy. There's a lot of people that are still unaware of what the role of a buyer's agent is in a real estate transaction. So a big part of our role as a group that represents buyer's agents is to advocate for consumer education, to help people understand the role that a buyer's agent does take within a real estate transaction. If we compare the Australian model to the US model, it's actually quite different. In the United States, a lot of people do partner with a buyer's agent, but the way that the buyer's agent is commissioned is slightly different to here in Australia. So I think there's a big component of consumer education that will come in terms of what is the role of a buyer's agent and what is the value that a buyer's agent can bring to a real estate transaction. And then, of course, I think there's the next level, which is, how do you differentiate buyer's agents across Australia? Because you are right, Grace, there's been a lot of new entrants enter the industry. And of course, when you're entrusting someone to help you purchase one of the biggest transactions that you will make in your life, whether that's your home or whether that's actually helping you to build an investment portfolio, you really need to ensure you're working with a trusted advisor. We feel as a membership organisation, there's some people that have entered the industry for the wrong reason. Perhaps they're chasing commissions, which is not what our industry exists for. We are there to advocate for the buyer, to protect the consumer, to ensure that they are very aware of everything about the property before they enter that transaction. So it really is about advocating to protect the consumer, and that is the buyer when represented in that real estate transaction.
We're about to take a short break. Don't go away. We'll be back with more from Melinda Jennison on the other side.
Crush the burden of rising mortgage repayments. We understand that managing your finances can be overwhelming, especially as interest rates continue to rise. With access to 70+ lenders, our team of specialised brokers will find the best rates for your specific needs. Count on us to secure a lower rate swiftly, giving you the confidence you deserve. Book an appointment with one of our experts today to protect your financial well-being and secure your future. Call us now at 02 8866 2444 or visit our website at finny.com.au.
Welcome back to this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. We are chatting with the new president of REBAA, the Real Estate Buyers Agents Association of Australia, Melinda Jennison. Melinda, before the break, it was great to hear when your priorities are going to be for the coming year. And obviously, and I love that you brought up that buyers agency is still in its infancy. I think that's a really cool space for you to be operating in, to have that mindset and to continue to elevate the profession in that way. And just really stressing that point of the need for trusted advisors and the role that buyers agents can be playing in the property market. I'm curious. It's been a pretty interesting period for property. I mean, I could say since 2020, I could say since 2021, but we'll keep it a little bit more current topical. I mean, we're on the cusp of spring 2023. This year alone has seen a lot of interest rate rises. We've seen a lot of talk around housing affordability, the rental crisis. We've seen a lot of talk by government's National Cabinet the other week coming out, putting forward a plan to increase supply before 2030. You've got a pretty cool helicopter view of what's going on. Can you talk us through what some of the conversations are that you are having at the moment? And, what is the actual outlook for the property market at the moment? Because there's a lot for people to be wading through right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's the $1 million question when you ask, what is the outlook? Because I think that there's so many people that make predictions about what's likely to happen in the property market. And look, we only have to look at the major banks. They make their predictions, they revise their predictions, and very rarely are they correct. What I will say is that across Australia, there's so many different property markets that are doing so many different things right now. And I think anybody that is, putting property in one basket as an Australian Australian market is making a big mistake. I think we've got to look at what's happening in certain locations whereby we've got listing volumes increasing in some of the major capitals such as Sydney and Melbourne. So that means we've got more supply, buyers have more options. We've also got property price growth starting to slow down. It's definitely still positive, but it's not at its peak rate of growth in those two markets. We look at Brisbane, we look at Perth, we look at, what's happening in these markets, and we still have price growth that is increasing. So, every month when we, assess what's happening in the market, we have to take into account not only that holistic view, because that overall arching view is influenced by the likes of rising interest rates and economic performance and consumer sentiment, but then what's happening at a local level, that's very much influenced by the supply and demand metrics at a local market level. And that can be very different depending on which market within Australia you're looking at, but also which market within a capital city you're looking at, because of course a capital city is not a single property market as well.
It must be good from your perspective, both, in your work as a buyer's agent, but then now in this advocacy role as president of REBAA, to see so much chatter and discourse at a national, state and local level by governments at this point in time. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. When we're seeing some, state governments implement, land tax changes and, really try to disincentivize investors, it has a huge impact on, buyer confidence, on investor participation in a market and, the overall metrics of how a property market may perform. So, as an advocacy group, we always like to, remind people that, for example, property investors are not bad people. They're there to actually provide housing and accommodation for individuals that need a home. And we'll always advocate for what we believe in, and that is, ensuring that everybody is given or provided with a fair go. Regardless of what's happening across all markets, it's really our job to help consumers to be educated on the facts around a situation rather than embellish that, that story, which can quite often happen in some media headlines.
How do you go about that education piece? Because it is a tough one. Not only do you require engagement of individuals wanting to know about that, but then more broadly, you are fighting against a lot of, as you've just said, mainstream media coverage and hype and sensationalism and, just conflicting perspectives in that way. What are the main ways that you can be going about that?
Look, this is something that personally I've been so passionate about since, running our own buyers advocacy business here in Brisbane. I think that there's always going to be the truth, and then there's always going to be an embellished headline or a story that, sells. So I think that providing factual information by providing commentary to the media, as an organisation, REBAA do have a very active role in, speaking to the media and providing their input. But also we have, a number of members that put out factual resources that are available to consumers to help people understand what's happening at a local market level. And of course, some of those resources are things like what we already contribute for you at the Smart Property Investment Show. So these are the sorts of resources that consumers can access if they know where to find them.
Thank you so much. Didn't expect a little smart property investment plug there, but thank you for that. A bit of a personal one for you, Melinda. Coming into this role now, how do you then split your time between Streamline and what is a very big national role?
It's a really good question. And obviously, this is a very new appointment for me. However, it's not a decision that I, came to quickly. I did spend some time, ensuring that my team were on board. I'm very fortunate that I have a team that work with us here at Streamline Property Buyers to deliver the services that we deliver for our clients. And we're very systematized and process driven to ensure that regardless of who's doing what role, our clients are still getting the best outcomes. Perhaps a little less sleep in the months and years ahead. We might cut into some more personal time. But as I said, you don't take on a role like this without expecting to make some compromises. And of course, having the support of family and my own buyers advocacy team around me will ensure that I have the capability and the time to be able to give this role what it deserves.
I'm sure they are very proud of you. Already killing it, and you're only in the first week. Keep up the good work. We're going to take another break there. See you on the other side. Welcome back to this very special episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. We are joined by the new president of REBAA, Melinda Jennison, also of Streamline Property Buyers. How some of you probably know her. She's had a fair few appearances on the show in the past. Melinda, I know we're going to be hearing a lot more of you in the months and years to come, and that greatly excites me. But one thing, I've already mentioned it from the outset, that we love about you is the monthly updates that you provide on the Brisbane property markets to the Smart Property Investment website. And am I able to ask for a little bit of insight into what we can expect in that next update from you?
You certainly can, because of course, my background is research. I have a PhD, so I love data and I love crunching numbers. But more so than that, I love overlaying that objective data with what we see on the ground, and that's that subjective information. And I can absolutely guarantee you that, the data that comes out for the end of August will show price growth again in Brisbane. We still have a market of very low stock, and that's quite different to other markets around Australia, as I pointed out a little earlier. And because we have such low stock, we've got this growing pent-up demand competing for fewer properties, and that's what's actually continuing to cause this price escalation across our city. We talk to buyers all the time, and the biggest frustration that buyers have when they're reaching out to us is not understanding current values. And I think that in a market where property is just stagnating and values aren't moving, it's much easier for property buyers to understand what they need to pay. But in a declining market or a rapidly increasing market, that can be very different. So Brisbane's, up to the end of July experienced 4.2% price growth across the city. That's a big shift when we're actually looking at numbers. And that price growth momentum was still high. And in fact, it had increased between June and July, which was a little bit unexpected given the higher interest rate environment. So what I would say to buyers that are, looking at what's happening in Brisbane, it is still a very strong market. There's not a lot of stock, but buyer demand is high. But I will say Brisbane's not one property market either. So we are seeing some price softening in some areas that are in the mortgage belt areas where people potentially don't have the capacity to continue to pay more for property. Perhaps we're seeing more investors sell out of the market. There's a lack of home buyers there to actually buy in. So Brisbane as a whole, median values are tracking up, but it's not the same in all pockets across the city.
We're obviously crystal ball gazing to look anywhere beyond what's going on today, but spring, usually the period where we see more listings. Has that uptick occurred up there? Have you seen that yet?
Not yet. However, we are having conversations with agents, and those conversations that agents are having with sellers are starting to become more positive. I think the biggest issue that sellers have had in Brisbane is that most sellers who are owner-occupiers generally become buyers, and because there's been nothing to buy, there's been a little bit of a clog in the system. But also, a lot of times people will actually sell, rent, and then buy, but we have a rental crisis at the same time as low stock to buy. So it's very difficult for sellers to actually put their property on the market if they don't know where they're going to go. So for property investors, and I know this is an investment-based podcast, there's often opportunity in a market like this where you can provide more flexible rent-back options or longer settlements for those sellers that have just, got nowhere to go, because it provides them with a level of security. And let's face it, no one wants to be left without somewhere to live if they are looking to upgrade their home.
It's so true. And I feel like it's probably, is it being exacerbated by, the excitement that is around Brisbane and that whole southern Queensland area, the lead up to the Olympics in the 2030s. There's so much going on up there. Is it exciting times ahead? And do you think people are just getting a little bit unsure about what that means for right now?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of, in the pipeline for Brisbane, let's just say. The 2032 Olympics in itself, that's not going to change property markets around our city, but it's the economic development, the infrastructure development, the creation of jobs, the change that our city will undergo between now and then that's exciting for Brisbane and certainly exciting for Brisbane property. We just had a new Southeast Queensland draft regional plan released a few weeks ago. Now that's going to shape the future way that Brisbane will be developed. And I think that's so important for people to understand where we're going to see more densely densely populated pockets, why we're going to need to rely much more on public transport. So yes, there's a lot of hype around what's coming to Brisbane, but I feel that Brisbane's one of those cities that just hasn't had the excitement of that development like Sydney and Melbourne. So we're going to see a very different Brisbane 10, 20 years from now compared to the Brisbane today. And it's so important that property investors understand what that will look like, because that's going to ultimately ensure that the returns that they're looking for will be, there when they're making that asset selection.
I mean, beyond that and just what is going on economically up there. And then you've got the fact that you've just taken on the role as president of REBAA. So much going on for you, Melinda, at the moment. How are you feeling right now? I'd love to sort of, get a glimpse into your, just mindset at the moment.
Look, I feel really grateful that I received the support from members to take on this role as president. I'm obviously extremely excited about the opportunities that exist for our organisation in the months and years ahead. Personally, I'm super passionate about what I do. I absolutely love helping property buyers to find the right home. I get a lot of personal satisfaction about guiding property investors through that journey of asset selection to ensure that they're targeting the right property based on their goals and based on their personal circumstances. I love working with our small team here at Streamline Property Buyers, and I've got a really happy family life. So overall, life's pretty good. Yeah.
I mean, massive congratulations again. It is so well deserved to see you elevated to the role of president. I'm just thinking for any consumers, investors, even potential buyers agents out there that are listening to this show, REBAA obviously holds a very important place in that political, social landscape. How can they get in touch if they've got questions or they've got concerns? I feel like this is the perfect opportunity to really start that open discourse.
Absolutely. Look, I would recommend that for people wanting to understand what REBAA's role is, or to find a buyer's agent that is already a member of REBAA, or in fact, if you're looking to understand what the benefits of REBAA membership are, head to the REBAA website, which is rebaa.com.au. You'll be able to find the state rep, depending on which state you're in. You can reach out to that person to obtain more information. If you're wanting to apply for membership, that process is detailed on the website as well. So that would be my recommendation. Head on over to the website to explore the information that's available there. And of course, there's the opportunity to search for a buyer's agent, depending on the region that you're looking for, who's also affiliated with REBAA from the website.
I know how busy you must all of a sudden be. So again, thank you so much for taking the time today, Melinda, and truly well done. I know I've said it a lot of times over this episode, but I really do mean it. Can't wait to see what the next year brings for you.
Thank you, Grace. It's been a pleasure to chat to you today, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
To everyone who is listening along, we hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Smart Property Investment Show. Like or review us on whatever platform that you do listen to your podcast on. Any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, editor@smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. Check us out on our social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our brand new YouTube. And as always, make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter for all the latest updates. Till next time, stay safe and well wherever you are listening from. Bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.